appreciate it. All right, now let me segue from this to the more general question: is President Obama the best president ever? 100 days into it, that's what his supporters are saying. Here now, CNBC contributor Governor Howard Dean, former governor of Vermont, former Democratic National Committee chairman. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Dean on the morning show a couple of days ago. It is a pleasure, sir. And our old friend, CNBC contributor Jerry Bowyer.
Hey, Larry.
Governor Dean, I know where you're leading on this. That's not a shocking issue. And I want to say at the top, Henry Paulson's Republican Treasury Secretary from the Bush administration. But one of the things that bothers me about the Obama story, and I'll be honest, in some sense he's continuing policies of President Bush's last year or so that I didn't approve of, is that they are going to put the guns to the head of these CEOs. They are going to control the banking system. They are going to ride roughshod over the investor class and over the shareholders, Governor.
Well, I hardly think bailing out these banks is riding roughshod over investors. If you'd let them go bankrupt, which is what would have happened, the investors and the bondholders would have zero. The reason the government, under both Bush and Obama, have bailed these people out is not because they love the banks, they love investors, and they love shareholders. It's because if the financial system of the United States collapses, so does the financial system of the world, and that was going to harm an enormous number of people. So, look, it's easy to go back and criticize Paulson or criticize Bernanke or Geithner or whoever you want in hindsight. That's always easy to do. The fact of the matter is, whether you like Ken Lewis or not, and I've never met the man, the Bank of America made sure that Merrill Lynch didn't go broke, and that was the main hope of the government at that time. So I'm really not feeling in a very critical mood. There'll be investigations. If some wrongdoing comes up, then fine, then the people should be punished. But we were very close to a total financial collapse.
Right. All right. Let me get Jerry. Jerry, let me ask you, just to follow on what Governor said, and my particular worries that we are moving from a real free market system with the rules of law and the rights of investors and shareholders into a more government takeover mode, a government-directed mode, where the rights of shareholders are ride roughshod. I mean, look, did GM move to get rid of Wagner? I don't going to defend Wagner. I'm just saying I'd like the shareholders to remove him, not the government. I don't particularly want to defend Mr. Lewis or Victor Pandit of Citi or whoever. But I'm just saying that using
who decides?
Using TARP, the government may decide. And generically, there's no exit strategy from TARP. So, Jerry, where are you coming out on this? This is part of Mr. Obama's 100 days. He is essentially following what was the Bush path, maybe more so.
Yeah, well, he doubled down on Bush. Bush went in the wrong direction with an imperial presidency, and now Barack Obama is doubling down on this enormous concentration of power in the hands of the executive. This is unprecedented, and it's really disturbing. You know, liberals have had a tendency to be, worried about concentration of power in the executive branch, and I think that's wise for them to be concerned about that. So does that count when Democrats are in office too? I mean, we have a Treasury Secretary as part of the executive branch basically sitting there in the merger, compelling a merger. And we had under the auto bailout another compulsion of a merger. We're running America's largest companies out of the West Wing. This makes no sense whatsoever. It's completely alien to the American political tradition.
Governor Dean, that's an interesting point. Circling back to General Motors, which should be in bankruptcy and probably will be in a couple of days. Chrysler, the announcement may be coming. But here's the deal. As I understand it, Team Obama's kind of telling them what cars to produce, what plants to open and close. And, of course, they want green cars, even though American consumers probably don't agree. I know you're a green supporter, Governor, but does it trouble you that the Oval Office is running General Motors?
Well, first of all, I think both of you are exaggerating the case. Are they making decisions that would normally have been made by private business? Yes, they are. Are they telling them which plants to close? I think that's highly unlikely. Let me just be very clear about this.
Telling who to merge with.
That's true, because that's the most likely partner. Let's be very clear about this. The business community, at least these people that we're talking about, acted grossly irresponsibly over the last several years. Somebody has to come in and fix this mess, and it clearly is not going to be the business community. You all would argue that these folks can go bankrupt. In a perfect capitalist society, that's true. If you did that, millions and millions of people would be out of work, and even you have to admit, as what I would consider, it sounds like a libertarian at least, or a conservative anyway, even you have to admit that not only would millions and millions and millions of people be out of work, but but the financial system of the United States of America would have collapsed. I don't think that's a good outcome.
Yeah, but
I'm a James Madison guy, and I just believe we ought to follow the system given to us by the founders. And no, I do not believe millions and millions of people would have been out of work in a restructuring bankruptcy for General Motors. But we're going to find out soon because they are in fact about to go into a restructuring bankruptcy, and we'll see if millions and millions of people will go out of work.
That's because we've taken our time, and it's 3 or 4 months after the crisis, and we've had a chance to make
So 3 or 4 months made all the difference between millions and millions of jobs being lost. Just 3 or 4 months of extra time for them to plan. Why didn't they plan that in advance?
Well, when I was talking about 3 or 4 millions and millions, I was talking about the banks. I was talking about AIG, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Citicorp.
All those actually didn't need bailout money.
All those institutions would have collapsed. Every single one of those institutions would have collapsed. The entire financial system of the United States of America would have collapsed if George Bush and Hank Paulson hadn't done what they did, and I think they did the right thing.
I guess, Governor, let me ask you this on this point. There seems to be no exit strategy from TARP. We have this Inspector General Neil Barofsky, who has really come out and condemned the TARP program. And, you know, I have asked, is this potentially a criminal enterprise? Now, that's overreach and overspeak. But you know what? They just busted...
Larry, you wouldn't say that about yourself.
No, yeah, right. I'm just being honest because I'm so happy to have you on the show. But in all honesty, you've got potential for a criminal enterprise here. Look, they just busted a Tennessee financial plan.
That's right.
There's going to be another 20 of these or more. And there is no exit strategy. And I want to ask you, sir, once you go down this road with the state's heavy hand of intervention, even though it may have the noblest of intentions, the unintended consequences may be vast, and we wake up one morning and it is a state-directed economy with the government taking over, just like it was in Western Europe, which has been, as you know, slow growth down through the years. How do you react to that?
Well, I think I would say that we've been down this road before. It was in 1929. And Roosevelt came in and closed the banks. How do you like that? He didn't even just fire people. He just closed the damn banks for 12 days. Now, you know, the government is the institution of last resort. My guess is that there's a fair amount of agreement among the three of us that free market capitalism is a good thing. Where I think where we disagree is how much regulation you have to have.
And how long? And how long for these emergencies? Because
I think
sometimes the emergency, sir, you know, the emergency opens the door to a new, long-lasting, permanent government presence inside of free enterprise.
I think,
and the speed of these actions invites the corruption. The fact that you're taking $3 trillion and shoving it out the door basically with enormous discretion to government officials in the period, because we have to all do it within the first 100 days, is a formula for massive amounts of corruption. The speed and scale are, in fact, the problem. This is going to be Teapot Dome on steroids by the time we see all the
There are an awful lot of people who would argue, though, and many of them prominent economists from all parts of the spectrum, that if you don't shove the money out the door in a hurry, you end up with a depression. That's a lot. You know, as I say, it's easy to criticize this, and I don't disagree, Larry, with the idea that when you put that much money out there, there's going to be some corruption.
Yeah.
This is not a great world to live in, but it's a much better world to live in had Bush and Paulson and Obama and Geithner not done what they did.
Let me put a cap on this, Governor Dean. I'm going to ask you both. Governor Dean, after the first 100 days is nearly over, do you believe Mr. Obama's greatest president in history?
Are you want me to answer that now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I think anybody who says that after anybody's 100 days is making a foolish mistake. Most historians think you have to wait 10 years till after a president leaves, and I'm with them.
Jerry Bowyer, have you reached a decision after 100 days? Governor Dean says you have to wait 10 years.
This 100 days thing is an abomination. The Founding Fathers don't want us writing laws quickly like that. They want us actually thinking about the implications of these laws.
All right, we got to leave it there. Governor Dean, it's a pleasure, sir. I hope you'll come back to the Kudlow Report.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, Jerry Bowyer, as always, terrific stuff. We appreciate your points of